Hello YouTube, it's Hauntown here, and today we're gonna be talking about the magnificently creepy world of horror cartoons for children. Damn, it sounds weird when I say it out loud. I consider myself incredibly fortunate to have experienced childhood during the most amazing decade to have ever existed, or as I like to call it, the roaring 90s. To this day, I believe the 90s have been sort of like the Wild West when it came to products for children, and that was especially evident with cartoons. It was a time when companies were still kind of trying to figure out what would constitute an appropriate story for a kid, and while most of the times they got it right, giving us shows like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Tom and Jerry, there were the occasional animated series that really toed the line between entertaining children and scarring them for life, and of course, these are the types of cartoons we're gonna be talking about today. Children's horror is perhaps one of the weirdest genres of fiction to have ever been born. Even by its name, it feels like this thing was doomed to fail from the start, and yet, somehow, not only did it survive, but became incredibly popular by giving us some of the most amazing cartoons to have ever plagued our television screens. I can easily trace a huge part of my love for horror back to the weekends of my childhood, when I would wake up early in the morning and sit diligently in front of my TV for hours while a legion of animated shows was shot straight through my eyeballs and into my brain. And out of all of those shows, it was mainly the scary ones that truly stayed with me. The ones that I sometimes still dream about as an adult child. And it is some of these nightmarish creations that I wish to share with you today in hopes of infecting your dreams as well. Now, before we begin, I do wish to point out that the following horror cartoons are my own personal favorites and do not represent an objective testimony of the best scary animated shows to have ever existed, just the ones that I loved growing up. And with that being said, follow me, my friends, through this dark door as we take a look at the most horrific cartoons to have ever been witnessed by a child. I don't know about you, but back when I was a youngling, one of the most terrifying things that could happen to me was none other than a good old-fashioned nightmare. This wonderful time of night when your brain decides to vividly manifest the worst possible things during your sleep by taking inspiration from your personal fears for maximum psychological damage. So it was a good thing that once I'd wake up, the nightmares would end and I would have time to heal my troubled mind by turning on the television and watching some nice Saturday and Sunday morning cartoons that would wash away my bad dreams. I mean, nothing bad could ever happen to me by doing that, right? Right? Enter Nightmare Ned, an animated series about an 8-year-old boy whose every night turns to a fight for survival, since every time he goes to sleep, he's transported into his all-too-real nightmares that are based on problems he's dealing with in real life. I mean, damn it, man, why not make a kid's show about my intense fear of sharks as well, or my phobia of vegan food, huh? Anyway, Nightmare Ned came out back in 1997, and every episode featured two different stories about Ned Needlemeyer, our child protagonist, who had to face all sorts of disturbing hellscapes and ordeals that his mind would conjure up in his sleep as it struggled to cope with his everyday issues. Aside from some truly horrific sequences and alarming subject matter the series threw at you, such as bullying and animal abuse, what I always found to be the most off-putting about it, and at the same time what made it so effectively horrifying, was the artwork that was used to depict the nightmarish landscapes Ned was experiencing, with grotesque visuals and asymmetrical, crooked scenery doing an amazing job of increasing the creepy factor to extreme levels. It also did an excellent job of making you care about Ned's well-being, something that was largely owed to his voice actor, Cortland Mead, whose fantastic voice work made Ned heartwarming and relatable. Nightmare Ned is by far one of the most original animated series of the 90s, as well as one of the weirdest and most unsettling ones. It contributed immensely to me having even more nightmares than usual, and I can't thank it enough for it. For those of you interested in watching Nightmare Ned, all of its episodes are actually available for free on YouTube in HD quality, courtesy of a creator called Woomy, so I'll post the link to their playlist in the description below for your convenience. Now, the 90s were arguably responsible for some of the most memorable horror creations of all time, especially when it came to film and television. In my humble opinion, the reason why so many horror properties from that time period were so memorable was the fact that back then, CGI wasn't really a thing and everything was done practically, from monster costumes to disgustingly gory scenes. And there's really no series more representative of this approach than Tales from the Crypt, a name I bet most of you have heard of, even in passing. Tales from the Crypt was a horror anthology anthology television series for adults that was based on the comic series of the same name which came out back in the 1950s, with each episode being a self-contained horror story. Undisputably, the most unforgettable part of said series was the Cryptkeeper, a withered, rotten, gangly, wisecracking corpse that functioned as the host of the series, and whose job was to introduce its story and also say a few words of warning right before the episode's end. The series became infamous for its graphic violence, profanity, and sexual scenes, so it only made sense that some television executives saw it and thought, "Hey, you know what? This seems like something kids would enjoy." And just like that, Tales from the Cryptkeeper was born. Tales from the Cryptkeeper kept the anthology horror story format of the adult version of the series, but toned down all the inappropriate parts to make it suitable for children. It also kept the Cryptkeeper as the host of the show, but made him less scary to make sure no kids would be traumatized by looking at this, even though the producers did briefly consider keeping the same puppet from the adult show for this one as well before deciding against it. Tales from the Cryptkeeper had everything I loved as a child. Haunted houses, ghosts, werewolves, Frankenstein monsters, vampires, zombies, and that was just in the first episode, with the rest of them offering even more abominations to haunt your waking hours and infect your dreams. The show had incredible production values in terms of art, animation, and sound, and even though not all episodes were equally scary, it remains one of my favorite horror cartoons of all time. Just like with Nightmare Ned, Tales from the Cryptkeeper is available to watch for free on YouTube, courtesy of a channel called Retro Rerun, so I'll post the link to their playlist in the description below for anyone interested in watching the show. Back in 1996, when I was around 8 years old, my grandfather used to occasionally work at a factory that recycled paper. Essentially, that meant that every day he would get tons of books, magazines, newspapers, comics, and everything else made of paper and throw it in some huge shredders that would tear it apart and recycle it or something. I'm not entirely sure on the actual process that was followed. Anyway, one day he returned home and said he had found something I might be interested in while rummaging through the piles of paper stuff they would get at the factory, and then proceeded to hand me these two comic books. You'd have to live under a rock to not know who Spawn is today, but back then I had no idea what I was looking at. I just knew I had to read it. About an hour later, and after having watched Spawn tear apart the child killer, I was hooked and considered Spawn to be the greatest thing to have ever graced my little world. For those unfamiliar, Spawn was created by legendary artist Todd McFarlane of Spider-Man and Image Comics fame, and tells the story of Albert Al Simmons, a mercenary who is betrayed by some very bad people and ends up dying and going to hell, only to be offered the chance to return to life by Malebolgia, a huge demon that rules over the fairy land below. Wishing to exact vengeance on his enemies but also to see his wife and daughter again, Al takes the deal and returns back to Earth as Spawn, the most badass anti-hero ever, complete with cool cape and bitchin' chains. A couple of years after I got my hands on those comics, I happened to be browsing through the racks of my local video rental store for something to watch when my eyes fell on this videotape box cover, which was none other than the animated version of the Spawn comic books. The thing is, Spawn had always been an adult-oriented comic, and the same was true for the cartoon. The other thing is that the video store clerk, just like my grandfather when he first gave me those comic books, didn't know that and just allowed me to rent it simply because it was a cartoon. Thus, at 10 years old, I was holding the holy grail of adult cartoons in my hands and was rushing home to watch it. 3 episodes later, my young mind was blown and there was no one blowing it. Spawn the animated series is largely considered to be one of the best horror cartoons of all time, and also the one that forced the industry to up their game and raise the quality of animated shows across the board. From its excellent animation to its mature story, all the way to depictions of violence and blood that were only seen in Japanese anime at the time, Spawn the animated series became a true cartoon landmark and a show that everyone should watch at least once, just to see what the fuss is all about. Lucky for you, most of the episodes are available for free on YouTube, courtesy of creators Truckin' Dad and Lamont G, so I'll put the link to their playlist in the description below for those curious to see it. In 1983, a man named Chris Wiggs wanted to make a nice toy for his daughter to play with, so what he did was he took a makeup powder compact and turned it into a small house with a tiny doll. What he didn't know back then was that by making that toy, he had inadvertently become the creator of one of the most phenomenal horror cartoons of all time. Weird, right? But hear me out. You see, 6 years later, in 1989, Wiggs licensed the concept for that small compact dollhouse to a company named Bluebird Toys, who immediately produced various different renditions of such small homes and outdoor settings and sold them under the name Polly Pocket. Polly Pocket toys were aimed at young girls and became so successful that Bluebird Toys decided to try and make something familiar for a boy demographic. And it was this decision that led to the creation of Mighty Max in 1992. Mighty Max took the concept of Polly Pocket but approached it from a horror perspective. Instead of nice small homes, Mighty Max was comprised of horror heads, doom zones, and large playsets, with each one featuring its own creepy setting and monstrous villains, all of whom were after Max, a teenage boy and also the protagonist of the series. Mighty Max proved to be incredibly popular with young boys, so it was only natural that 1 year later, in 1993, fans of the toy line were treated to the first episode of its spin-off cartoon horror series. Mighty Max tells the story of Max, our teenage protagonist, who comes in possession of a mysterious cap along with a message saying that he's the chosen one. Soon after, he meets Norman, a tough-as-nails fighter, and Virgil, an old and wise fowl, who informs him that he is destined to fight against Skullmaster, an ancient sorcerer who wishes to destroy the Earth. Max also learns that his cap has the ability to open portals to different parts of the world, which allows him to visit different places in the blink of an eye. What made this show perfect for me, aside from its wonderful art style, amazing animation, top-notch voice acting, surprisingly on-point humor, and awesome theme song, was its ridiculously diverse cast of villains that Max had to go up against. From aliens, werewolves, mummies, and zombies, all the way to a huge Cyclops eye, the majority of episodes featured different monsters, and most of them opened with said monsters killing a victim to demonstrate the danger they posed. Which brings us back to what I said previously about these shows sometimes towing the line between appropriate and disturbing for children. I also loved the various countries the series visited, showing you landmarks and cities from all over the world, which was incredibly exciting for my young mind back in the day, considering my own country was all I really knew. The series even had an educational component at the end of each episode, where Max would say a few words about the countries he got to visit at each given adventure. I honestly cannot stress how much I love Mighty Max. It is my all-time favorite children's horror cartoon, and I'm so obsessed with it that I still collect its toys to this day. As for the episodes themselves, it is nearly impossible to find them all in good quality today, but thankfully a wonderful YouTube creator by the name of Mighty Max Restoration Project has been doing God's work by uploading remastered versions of the show's episodes, which are awesome to watch, so I link his channel in this video's description for those wishing to experience this masterpiece. So this is it, ghouls and gals. These are my favorite horror cartoons from when I was a child, the terrifying shows that kept me company during my early years and still haunt me in the most wonderfully nostalgic of ways. If you've reached this point of me rambling about my favorite children's horror animated shows, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to you and also want to know what are your favorite horror cartoons from your childhood. Let me know in the comments below, and until next time, remember to stay spooky!